Guys, welcome back to our next segment. I'm sorry, you just see like Patrick's little jazz hands coming in. All right, so this segment is great. It is going to be on finding your modifier. And finding your modifier, this is what blows up in our DMs. So the modifier is the word that you use that modifies your adjectives, right? So quick refresher. Your adjectives are the three words that you use to describe who you are. And remember, they are called adjectives for a reason because adjectives describe people, places, or things. So we are not nouns, we are not race cars, we are not decades. We are adjectives. And we use three of them to describe who we are. And if you guys have been following us in all this process, you know that when we first came up with the idea to come up with three adjectives, it became like this kind of interesting battle, right? Like people are like, well, I don't want to have the same adjectives as your adjectives.
So hyper individualism.
Yes.
Almost.
Exactly, right? Like we've got super individuals here. And but what we found was that when people were trying to come up with different adjectives to describe their very core, their essence, it became difficult because we have really fostered a community here that intersects on some core principles, right? So we've got a group of people at Tibby, and we've got a group of people that we work with, you guys out there in this world here, that really have an ease about them, right? And so I call that chill. A lot of you guys call it ease, you call it effortless. Those are all synonyms, right? So chill is definitely a tenet for the kind of people that we are and the kind of people that we work with. And then modern. And modern means a lot of things. It means progressive in your outlook, it means open-minded. It means never wanting to stay stuck in the past and constantly learning and moving forward. So we realized that we're all modern in that way, right? Chill, modern, and then classic was the third adjective that we put in there. And we realized, classic also means a reference for heritage, what's come before us, and really a very deep appreciation for craftsmanship. So chill, modern, and classic really describes the root of who we are. But what we noticed is, even when all of these pieces that we wear all the time hit all those marks, the skirt I'm wearing, right? It's absolutely chill, it's in denim. It is super, super modern, but like it's classic, right? It's a denim skirt. So this is like the epitome of chill, modern, and classic. Even the sweater here in its shrunkenness and the yarn, chill, modern, and classic. But what we realized is somewhere along the way, even though you're wearing chill, modern, and classic, and you're wearing chill, modern, and classic, we don't look alike because we have those special things about us that modify it. And so the modifier is that one word that when you're getting dressed, you're thinking, what's the story that I want to leave people with? And it's that overlay onto your chill, modern, and classic. And it is where we all differ greatly here at Tibby. And so I'm going to describe my modifier before we have these guys jump in here as well. But for me, my modifier is humor. I love bringing in humor in some way. So for me, I think that's why I'm very comfortable wearing the socks with the shoes here. And I think even, if I have a shoe that has a pocket that allows me to like have things like my chapstick on the go, or it's just like one of those product fails. I'm sorry, jam my chapstick up in there. If I have my chapstick on the go, I can even like have a, like here, I have a delicious cookie if I want to eat that later. But I love it when something funny is around. And I realized that the reason why I chose humor as my modifier, and I didn't choose it, right? Like it chose me. But the reason why is because I'm a person who's known for being overly direct. I like to cut straight to the chase. I find it is always the fastest way to get from A to B. And when you're overly direct, sometimes, that really kind of comes off as strong. And the last thing I want to be is like overly direct, and then I'm like in this like big angry black jacket and big platforms or whatever. Like then it's just like too much, out of here, get out of here. So to me, having that bit of humor is what allows me to let people know that I'm not taking myself too seriously. And when I feel such really strongly about something, it's simply because it's something I'm very passionate about. And having that humor and that lightness to it kind of keeps that in balance for me. So that modifier humor for me, that little bit of lightness. What's your modifier?
So my modifier, oh, here you go.
Who are you?
Who am I? I'm Patrick, by the way. You guys know me. Hopefully if you do, if you don't, my name is Patrick. My modifier is specifically nostalgia. And this was, I really had to dive into the sense that like I truly enjoyed as a child. I spent every weekend with my grandparents, and my grandmother always took me to like antique stores and vintage stores, and then I collect kind of vintage in my older years, in the sense that like I like to just have these things with like true meaning. Like when I travel and when I spend time with friends, we usually will always hit up a vintage store when we're traveling. And then I collect family vintage in the sense that my father has items that I've technically taken from him, and my grandfather has gifted me a lot of his running tees.
So how do you mix that in when you're like all chill, modern, and classic?
So I have a little example. So like obviously you guys, some of you have seen this, but like this is one of my old running tees. So I like to use my modifier as a way to kind of filter when I'm getting dressed, B, when I'm also shopping either Tibby or anywhere else. I kind of put these goggles on with that filter in mind. And so just to directly correlate it to like what we have here at Tibby, I'm wearing the Perfect Unisex tee in bath salt. Like this really is like a heavyweight, like premium tee in the sense that like this is built for longevity. It's built for the test of time. That's kind of what.
So if your modifier is nostalgic, right? And it's kind of nostalgic because you want to leave people with the idea that you're a warm, nice guy, right?
Absolutely.
So if your modifier lends you to like wearing t-shirts like this, then when you are not wearing this t-shirt, because we don't wear like that t-shirt every day, right? So something like this is the perfect thing, and then you actually now modified it with your vintage belt.
Exactly. So this is my father's belt, so
exactly.
I'm holding that in. And then again, the same thing, I collect vintage 501. So this is like our Sam jean is a direct correlation that gives me the exact same feeling. So I know that I'm able to like have this piece, and it's gonna go with my closet, and it's gonna truly represent the inside, and it's going to truly project what I can non-verbally project about myself. I mean, the team was saying like, oh, how James Dean of your outfit, and that's, I mean, I think that really holds home
like,
to this
God,
nostalgia
Pretty
idea.
sure he
Yeah.
was a star of Giants.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
More about that later. But then also, like, again, there's the element in this red sweater from fall that has, this. Again, it's a very heavy knit. There's this craft and heritage feel to this.
What's the name of this sweater?
Yes, Stella?
It's the Sam
Soft lambswool distressed cardigan.
Yeah.
Soft lambswool distressed cardigan.
So what's interesting too about this is, so the way that you've used this as a modifier is different. So like you're using it as a modifier because it's got a vintage vibe to it, but it's still very polished.
Yes.
And for me, I use it as a modifier for humor because like it looks like someone chewed up my sweater.
Exactly.
In the most perfect
Or
way.
you're very nervous during a meeting.
Exactly. So that's how I'm using it.
Also,
and then,
for my modifier, which I'll touch in just a moment, is edgy. And for me, this distressedness, this texture is really great when it comes to layering for me. So I love that kind of peeking out to kind of bring more intensity to my outfit.
Yeah. But if your modifier is something like a little more like you like to amp things up femininity wise, or like with a super polish, this may not be the sweater for you then.
Exactly. And then that's where you're
fine.
applying that
That's
filter
all
when
the
you're
preference,
shopping.
of course.
So you're shopping smart. And you're
Yeah.
shopping for like what's really meaningful to you
Yeah.
specifically. So Grace, do you want to kind of expound upon your modifier?
Yes. Hi guys. I'm Grace, and my modifier is edgy, as I said before. Again, as Amy said, I didn't choose it. It kind of chose me. It was something that my team constantly kept saying when I was getting, putting outfits together, and I had to kind of embrace it and own it, and I really love it because now I see it in that scope most of the time when I'm getting dressed. And what I utilize as like key things when it comes to me being edgy is something that you constantly see me when I'm styling are my band tees. This kind of talks to me when I'm like my teenage years, when I was like a little punk kid and I just constantly grabbed a band tee as I was getting dressed. And this is such a comfort for me. I usually utilize this as a pop of color or something to dress something down that's too refined or too classic. And what I mean by that is something like this chino Stella. And I would kind of put this together and maybe a sneaker, and I feel like so myself, but at the same time it's a statement, and it really talks to the edginess, that kind of intensity, that sharpness that I really love to lean into.
And just a little fun fact here with these is when you have these t-shirts that are important to you, the thing is your superpower of like permission to wear something and feel strong in it is when it means something to you. Like it literally, so go the slow route with these. Don't go to like a store in LA and be like, I will take 7 concert tees.
No.
Really, like when you find something that talks to you, buy it. When you are on vacation and it can lock in a memory for you, buy it.
For sure, and that just kind of talks to my individuality, my modifier, is the fact that it's such a passion for me. I collect these as I go to the concerts that I am now at my age, and I just kind of like to wear it as a way to be like, oh man, I really feel confident in this. So I utilize it in that way, as well as just getting something a little bit more refined, toning it down. Another one of my modifiers are leather jackets. I kind of have this thing in which a leather jacket is kind of like a t-shirt for me, in which I just kind of throw it on
And
whenever
I love that.
yes,
Yeah.
this fit, this grain,
So
especially.
this is the same leather jacket that we did last fall. If you have it already, good for you. That's great. You're done.
Awesome.
But if you don't, this is the same one that we did before. We brought it back in the dark brown distress, and then in the pure black leather as well.
Mhm.
James Dean, you know.
Yeah,
James
exactly. I
Dean,
mean,
that
the
cool
black one's on my
factor.
personal list.
There you go.
And I kind of use this as a way to kind of break some of the items that I have in my closet that are maybe a little bit too evening, such as this guy right over here. And I would kind of put this with this guy, and then maybe like a flat to kind of talk about, you know, having a really good clash, the mixture of textures. I would even put this on when I have a leisure day with a cashmere and like a Calder sweatpants, and go out the door, and I still feel cool and edgy with this guy.
Exactly. So to drive home the idea of what a modifier is, if this is kind of this chill, modern, and classic dress, you've modified it edgy here. I'm going to be more apt to wear probably like a strange flat sandal or something with it to give it like a really, you know, to lighten the mood, right?
Yeah.
Because it's a beautiful dress.
And for instance, with what I'm wearing right now, where it's this crepe, very like nice textured shirt, a pair of jeans, a sculpted shoe, and then this guy to kind of bring it all together. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, Amy, I think so one of the one points we also wanted to speak on is essentially like the modifier is like the hardest thing I think for some people to admit.
Yes.
It's kind
Feel
of like,
kind of douchey.
Uh-huh.
yeah, you really,
I
yeah.
was a little embarrassed the first time home. I was like, oh, you're so edgy. And I'm like, am I?
It is, and you know, it's so funny because in the boutique we spent time all together as a group, and we're very close knit in the New York boutique. And when we had to really try to narrow down those modifiers, and so my advice sometimes is spend time with the people that you know authentically and that truly love you, and then that will give you a great mirror back onto like what your modifier might be. I think it is extremely personal, and you don't
Wait,
have to.
do you find that? Because
Yes, I find it because these people really helped me narrow down essentially what it was. Because I was like, yeah, I like vintage, but I like modern. I like Tibby. I like designer.
okay, but let me say this.
Okay.
What I've found
Okay.
is that the people who are helping people kind of get to that modifier are kind of other creative pragmatists.
Yeah.
What I found hard is like when a woman's in the dressing room and she's like, my mom says that and I'm like, okay, or my husband or my best friend who's known me since high school. Those are the ones that they're like, no, you're not creative. Remember in 3rd grade when you,
So let's amend that.
yeah.
I would say
Surround yourself with people with the same mindset.
I
Right.
also feel like us here at the store, we're such creative pragmatists, like experts, that we were able to kind of help clarify that and give you like a little bit more focus and notion.
Absolutely.
And we're always around each other. We kind of grab that. We have the same mindset. So we're able to help each other out, and the same way we will be able to help you out.
And that kind of brings me to, I want to bring Sierra on because
Sierra.
Sierra's a really great example of like a sense in finding your modifier and kind of going through multiple ones and kind of teasing and trying to come to understand what you're feeling on the inside. So Sierra, do you want to just kind of give us a little bit about your modifier?
Totally. Hey, I'm Sierra from the New York flagship store, and my modifier is curious. It's an interesting story about how I arrived there.
It's so lovely to see.
It was a
though.
long time since I was here.
But it was so lovely to see the transition.
It was a journey, and I was very, very wonderfully supported. So when I first started at Tibby, I really thought my modifier was androgynous. I would use oversized clothing to really hide and be very, very comfortable in myself. And like Amy said, it was only about the time that I was really exploring my prep style that I started to feel like a total douchebag, that I knew I was like onto something. So recently I've been really playing with prep, taking inspiration from Carolyn Bessette, Audrey Hepburn, Princess Diana. Just really, really playing in that realm. And then I realized it's not that I'm preppy and no longer androgynous. And it's not that I'm not preppy either. It's that I'm insatiably curious. And this is why it's my modifier, because it's something that will carry me as I continue to explore. And I won't outgrow it because I'm always growing and I'm always curious.
Yeah.
That's lovely.
And that, thank you. for that. So, wait, did you say what you're wearing?
So I'm going to talk about my modifiers. First of all, I'm 5'9" and I wear a size 10, so just know. And my 2 modifying items are, I will throw on my douchebag flats. Now I wear these ironically. This
Wait,
is
why are
ironic,
they
right?
douchebag?
Yeah.
Because they're Coco Chanel flats. And it's like, what the hell are you like? I don't know. It's just,
But they
to
can
me,
be really good irony.
they're
Yeah,
chic,
sometimes,
exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah, chic,
Yeah.
good irony. It's
Yeah.
just, that's the insecurity in me that likes to call things douchey. It makes me feel good.
You know, let me just say very quickly, when we talk about chill, modern, and classic, and our customer and the mindset being a bit effortless, hands down what I find is that the people that we interact with have a sense of humbleness about them. So I think that when you call the Chanel flat douchey, what you're really doing is you're like, okay, you know what,
We're not pretentious.
I'm not Miss Pretentious here. So I get it.
Yeah, I'm not
makes
pretentious.
sense.
This is, it's well-intended Chanel flats. And then another thing that I really like to do is I will do the classic over-the-shoulder cardigan. I always have a really lightweight one, either in my bag, kind of spilling over my shoulder. And I think that it's really important to do it in a fun and silly way of either doing a double color clash or mixing in an icky texture there. Because I'm taking something that is predictably prep, but making it my own.
So these are both this is from the summer collection, and then this skirt is part of the fundamentals collection. Thank you.
Thank you.
So someone asked a question, can your fundamentals change over time? And I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Yes, this is gonna happen a few times, guys, just note. Someone asked, can your modifier change over time? And the answer is yes. What doesn't change over time are your adjectives, right? And for me, like going back and looking at my favorite outfit from 6th grade, I'm like, geez, it was always there and I just didn't pay attention. So the adjectives don't change, but the modifiers do evolve sometime depending on what's going on in your life. And the reason why I'm holding this just
Spike
a
cup.
horrible, like medieval spike thing is because this is a good example where when I had my first child, I went through this phase where I wanted everything to be edgy. Like it had to be super edgy. And I really ended up with like a skin tight black leather jacket, Sergio Rossi, like spinely silver spiked heels. And then I would top it off with this bracelet. And the reason why I'm showing you this, because I actually tried to get through airport security with it in Savannah, Georgia, and they kicked me out and made me go FedEx it. They wouldn't even let me on the plane because they knew that I could take out like 9 pilots with us. And the thing is, of course, like I wanted to not feel like I was like some, banging around in a van with like a Ziploc full of Cheetos with me all the time, like new person. I wanted to feel like, like, I don't know. It's like when you have kids, I mean, Katura, like you're just, like you want to feel human, right? And so I thought, well, then to feel human, I'm going to lean into edgy. And so the problem is in that moment of time, I completely lost my way. And I didn't lose my way because my modifier was edgy. I lost my way because my modifier became everything that I was wearing. And so I didn't look like myself at all. So the reason why you have chill, modern, and classic, the reason why you have those 3 adjectives is it absolutely grounds you. And then that modifier is that extra form of communication that you have. And we all know that all of this is about building a dialogue so that we can communicate with each other better. And I promise, when what is on the inside is shown visually on the outside, when you've nailed that form of communication, like the skies open up. So, am I good, Derek?
You're good. You have
Okay.
a couple. Do you want to take another question?
Yes,
Is there a
another-
difference between what is the difference between a modifier and an adjective?
press rewind.
Next question.
Well, an adjective describes your core, and a modifier is that overarching thing. And it is what you leave someone with in a room. So when Grace was saying earlier that modifiers are sometimes the things that we're embarrassed to say, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people are embarrassed to declare themselves as an intellectual or as a creative, right? And if you read The Creative Way by Rick Rubin, he talks a lot about this. So does The Artist's Way by Julie Cameron, I
Yeah.
think. Yeah.
Julie
So it all talks about like that inhibition that we have to kind of forthrightly declare ourselves as something. And I know even when I started Tibby 27 years ago, I never called myself a designer. Like, and I remember one time a friend of mine, she was like, fuck man, you know how to sketch. I'm like, I do. And she's like, but I didn't know that because you don't even refer to yourself as a designer. So somehow you believe that like you have to have all of these accreditations. Is that the right word? Anyways, you know what I mean? Like these graduate degrees to bestow upon you something. So the modifier is usually the thing that you feel a little douchey
Admitting.
saying out loud
Yeah.
because, and so when we talk about modifiers changing, I would say when I graduated from college and I was working in my first job at Ogilvy Advertising, I wanted people to think I was smart. You know, that was really important to me. So it didn't mean that I would walk into a room like all just balls out like super creative or would still
Our
looked up
feet.
at that. Anyways, it just meant that I wanted people to take me seriously. And so then for that time in my life, it was really, really critical that smart be the vibe that I was giving off ultimately. And I wish I'd known that back then. I would have found better ways to have communicated it because I went full on like hardcore business suits and pointy shoes and the whole.
I
The
also
whole
feel
thing.
like once you understand your modifier, you're able to make it appropriate depending on where you go. So let
Yeah.
it be at the office, let it be that you're running a quick errand, let it be that you're going to a dinner or an event, a life event for instance. You kind of have this modifier as a sense of yourself, but at the same time, you're making it in the world or the event or the life thing that you're walking into.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And what I want to bring up is like when you, I'm going to bring out the furry guys here because what you have seen through the Creative Pragmatist book and through all of our IG conversations and style class is we really want to get you to the point then where you are thinking about the items that you invest in as tools. So if we talk about what your modifiers are, if you know that like, okay, I need a funny shoe in my closet for me. I need a humorous shoe, right? And so this is going to be the tool for that. So I'm going to back off then on how many humorous shoes I buy. Like Derek, when we were in Milan and I was trying on the J.W. Anderson frog shoes.
You loved it for.
I loved it for a
so
second.
hours.
Then Sarah walked by and she's like, hard no,
Yeah.
back away, hard no. So it was like, cause I had this.
Yeah.
I'm done. I don't need shoes with frogs on
I'm
them.
glad you didn't get them.
I'm glad.
Like I don't think you'd ever have worn those.
I know I would not wear them. Sarah's like, I will get that from you from Target for like $12.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, just talking about that too, and me being edgy, I'm someone who absolutely loves a sculptural shoe.
Yeah.
I think like it being conceptual is a really great way for me to kind of, you know, put this in the in when I feel a little bit too posh.
Yeah.
And for instance, something like this where I feel like, oh, where am I going? I put this on and be like, oh, I'm gonna get a cocktail. I'll see you later, and I feel like myself.
Yeah.
Also, the pocket details, the functionality, and the texture really talk to me, and a sense of heritage. And again, this is classic, and it's modern, and it's chill. So it fits in those adjectives.
And for me, like I'm dying to wear this with like a dark gray tight and like a bright white shoe or something, just to have like, you know, just something kind of funny. I think I'm gonna have to bequeath this to you afterwards.
I need this again, talking to like my 15-year-old self.
And then I think again, like you talk about how again we want to leave someone with that feeling of warmth and sensitivity. I think that's also what I want to feel
Yeah.
when I'm also shopping. So when I put this on the Hopper blazer, I truly get a sense of warmth and like just sensitivity, and like this it just harkens so much on memories that I would have had with my grandmother. It just draws me back to that. And again, I think we talked about how it tethers you back to who you are as an individual.
Yeah, so if you're looking at this as a toolbox then to really help you with your like consistently conveying things, this would be the item in your closet that you use for that. And it's one that, you know, guys, of course, you can also find this at Vintage with some trimming up of muscles and things like that. But this is the jacket that we wanted as one that would give you that hardcore classic vibe, but have a very modern fit to it at the same time. And so what you want to think about too is like, even like here are some leather gloves that we have this season too. So when you're looking at like bringing in this modifier of nostalgia, and if you were to actually do this with like the distressed belt, then you might really be craving something like one extra level of modernness to
Yeah, I feel like I need to just
throw it back into balance, right?
I feel like I need a touch of like just a touch of polish almost.
Yeah, so it's always, always, always about just really digging around and finding that balance, and tuning into what you're feeling when you're getting dressed. So, and those, nailing that modifier and having a toolbox of items to help you express your modifier is one of the absolute best ways to feel like yourself. And that is the goal of personal style. Because, and this I have been stealing from Rick Rubin straight out, which I love, is what your personal style does is it allows you to visually say who you are. And the reason why it's important to identify your adjectives in your modifier is because if you cannot say it, it is very hard to then show it visually. And maybe you can do that once, twice, or a few times, but it's nearly impossible to do it in a way that is really consistent. And that is what people with great style do, is in a very consistent way, they get up and they show their personal style. And it's not because they magically have great outfits in rotation in their closet, it's because whatever they are pulling out, you can really see that through line and they tend to look just like themselves. So guys, that is the end of this segment on the modifiers. If you have the Creative Pragmatist book, go through it in sequence, because the book starts out with finding your personal style and your adjectives first, and then you are going to move on to modifiers towards the end. And that's why they don't all come up together. So the first area here is in the Creative Pragmatist book, finding your adjectives, and then when you get to the back here is when it's going to hit on the modifier. And I did that for a reason, because if you haven't really nailed an understanding and affirmation of what your core is, then it's really hard to jump to modifiers next. So CMC, your adjectives come first. All right, guys, so that is the end of this segment, and we have lots more to come. I gotta go get amped up on some kombucha right now. So tune in. We are gonna take about a 10 to 15 minute break here, and tune in. We will see you next on a style called the Good Fit. All right, see you guys.
Bye.